here we go. Time for the news, people. Time for the news. And here's a story from India. It's a something that really kind of touched me. It's a story about systematic slavery and slavery that's going on in India right now with people of color, because they have a system in India that's called the caste system, and it's a system that was put in place by England when the England used to have control over India, and they got India got out of that bondage when Gandhi stood up against India. But that system is still in place, and it's has to do with different levels of racism. So you have people on this level, this level, this level. So when you get all the way down close to the bottom, that's where you got people of color, dark skinned black people over there that are treated like crap over in India. And so this story is about about this brick company, ABC Brick Company, located near the Steamy Banks in northeastern India. Is much like any of the 200,000 brickmaking companies operating in India. And contract laborer Khatun, 24 years old, she has the same fate as roughly 12 million other workers toiling in the dusty brickyards. And the small, thin, sharp-featured woman, Khatun, looks older than her years. Her parents, also brickmakers, were forced to sell their tiny plot of farmland because their fields could no longer feed the family. They also needed the cash to build a house to accommodate 6 daughters. So Khatun abandoned school at age 14, and she has toiled ever since under the smokestacks of various brick companies. For 5 months of dry weather each year, jogging beneath the molten white sun, she lugs about 40 pounds, or about 8 to 10 unfired bricks. Unfired bricks are just raw clay bricks that have to be put in a fire called the kiln. And once they put them in the kiln, that kiln turns that clay into bricks. Atop her head, a human forklift, she covers several miles a day, racing to and from the firing pits. Her sweat turns to a thick coating of dust on her face into mud. So I make 136 rupees per 1,000 bricks, she says, citing daily earnings that add up to less than $2. At first, my back really hurt, but you just get used to it. India is the world's second largest brick producer after China, to feed a decade-long construction boom in its exploding megacities, multiplying call centers and new industrial parks. It bakes a staggering 250 billion bricks a year. Protected in theory by minimum wage laws, anti-child labor rules, and regulations prohibiting bonded labor, millions of men, women, and children are still endure conditions that one human rights group calls systematic slavery. Many laborers are locked into their backbreaking work by debt to dodgy labor brokers who charge large fees to secure the jobs. A recent medical survey found that nearly half of the nation's brick workers were underweight. More than half were anemic. In the brickyard outside Dubai, most of the loaders carting raw bricks to the kilns were women. They sang as they balanced their heavy burdens down wooden gangways into the earthen furnaces. Says, I'm paying for my sister's school fees, Khatun said of a younger sibling in the 6th grade. I don't ever want her to have to do this. And then she hustled off for another payload of bricks. So that's systematic slavery that's going on in India right now, that affects people of color that are over there, and they're suffering. I mean, this, when you think about slavery, you think about it. People think that slavery's over, and it's not. It's not over. It's they just learn to hide it, but it's still there. So here's a story about, well, I'm not going to even say. It's a person burned a cross outside a black family's home gets 11 years in prison. Okay. Seminary, Mississippi. This guy, Rivette, a 38-year-old white man, has pleaded guilty to the racist act of burning a cross outside the home of an African-American family in October 2017. He was convicted of several charges in connection to the crime and recently received his sentence of 11 years in federal prison. Rivette was reportedly convicted on one count of using fire in the commission of a federal felony, interference with housing rights, and a federal civil rights violation in connection to the incident. During his trial, he claimed he was remorseful. Yeah, right. Rivette entered a guilty plea in April and confessed that he went to a majority black neighborhood in Seminary, Mississippi to burn crosses that he himself created at his home with his accomplice, Graham Williams, who also pleaded guilty. Both Rivette and Williams said they did that racist act in an attempt to threaten, frighten, and intimidate black residents due to their race and color. So there's absolutely no place in our country or society for this type of behavior, and we would do all that we can to prevent these racist acts and bring to justice those who are intent on committing these type of stupid crimes. And of course, there are some Trump supporters. Judge Starrett described the defendant's actions as a big deal. He said, "It is not an act of courage to come in the night and try to intimidate somebody." Meanwhile, prosecutors wanted a harsher sentence for Rivette, saying that he even tried to recruit more people to join him during the cross burnings. I thought those days were over. A prosecutor stated, "This act has brought it all back." Brown Williams, his accomplice, who faces up to 30 years in prison, is scheduled to be sentenced on November 5th. Scheduled to be, so that's, here's another story here. Okay, now this affects us all in every state. So it says 67,000 black men could go unaccounted for in Georgia in 2020. There are roughly 1.6 million black men that currently live in Georgia, and research indicates that 67,000 of them are at risk of not being counted in the 2020 census, according to Stacey Abrams, nonprofit Fair Count. This could cost the community approximately $154 million a year in funding for the next 10 years. That's per year, $154 million in funding. That's why the goal of the former Georgia Democratic leader through Fair Count and the Black Count Initiative to ensure that hard to count populations, including black men, are properly accounted for. So that's just one state. We got to stand up and be counted, black men, black women. We got to stand up and be counted during this census that's coming up in 2020, because what that does is that affects your community directly. So if you don't be counted, that means that those funds won't be given to that city that you live in, and that city, just look at your schools. Just look at it that way. The schools that are in the black communities that are underfunded, that really truly need that funding to kind of bring them up to par. A lot of that funding disappears when you don't stand up and be counted during the census. So you got to get out there, man. Stand up and be counted. Let your numbers ring out there. So that's all 50 states. I'm not just talking. That story was from Georgia. I'm talking about all 50 states. So stand up and be counted, brothers. And this here's a feel-good story of the day, and it's a quick one. It's a mother and daughter are saving lives together, and it's in Washington, D.C. So the third hour of today shares the story of Jackie Penix, who was a mobile emergency paramedic for 18 years before her firefighter daughter, Jaleesa, inspired her to pursue a new career. Now the two are firefighters in Washington, D.C., and are paving the way for young kids along the way. So that's a mother and daughter that are both firemen over there in Washington D.C. And it's like, you know, it's like you very rarely see black firemen out there. There's two black women that are out there doing their thing, a mother and daughter, and she started as a EMT operator. The mother did, as you know, working in an ambulance, trying to save people's lives. So this is should be inspiration for a lot of young people out there that might be trying to pursue a job. You know, that particular job of being a fireman has it's been extremely segregated. I mean, highly segregated, and one reason being is because they make good money. I mean, they make real good money. They make more money than cops. So, you know, if it's an opportunity out there that you might be thinking about, and kids and young kids out there, they might want to try to pursue a career in firefighting. Yep. If you don't get nothing else today, folks, get some peace. Stand up and be counted. 2020 census coming up soon.